In regards to history, there's been a lot of talk about when this conflict actually started. A lot of Israelis want to put a focus on October 7th as the decimal point when Hamas attacked Israel. A lot of pro-Palestinians like to remind that this actually started over 75 years ago with the Nakba. But then a lot of Israelis like to respond about, King David and how Jerusalem has been Jewish over 2,000 years ago. Can you maybe clear up some of this history for us in regards to how long has this been actually going on?
Okay, so let's get back to the Roman Empire era, the year 0 BC. Jesus was born, and the Jews killed Jesus. Okay, so so basically talking about the history, I think speaking of things that happened 3,000 years ago would be kind of insane. But speaking of things that directly affect, let's speak about things that directly affect today's history. We don't want to talk about the Canaanites, my ancestors, Canaanite. We don't want to talk about the Assyrians or the Babylons or the ancient Egyptians. We want to talk about the recent events in the last 100 years that actually affect what's happening today. Like in the end of the 19th century, when the first Zionist accords have been happening in Europe, the percentage of Jewish people who've been living in Palestine were about 3 to 4%. And those are mostly Palestinian Jewish people. Those people identify as Palestinians, people who are living in historic Palestine. And then after the Zionist accords that have happened in Europe, the Jewish people who have been suffering from racism and have been suffering from living in ghettos and being discriminated against in Europe and in many parts of the world, they have started to immigrate to Palestine. And that has not been a problem. The problem was not that Jewish people were immigrating to Palestine. In fact, many people immigrated to Palestine, including Muslims from other parts of the Arab world, and many even Christians immigrated to Palestine throughout different parts of history. Immigration was not a problem. The problem was that the Zionist project in its core was about taking a land that is claimed to be for no people and giving that land to the people who have no land. They call themselves people with no land. Will have a land without people. And that land actually had people. It had more than 1 million Palestinians living on it. That land had my ancestors, basically. And no one can deny that. Like the historic records you cannot deny that there were people calling themselves the Palestinian people living on that strip of land. So when you come here on the goal of cleansing the area of the native population and creating your own political entity and creating your own promised land that is a Jewish ethno-state and disregarding all the already existing Christian people, the Muslim people, you even have Druze, you have Baha'iyyin, you have many different groups of people living in Palestine. So that is the issue. The tensions started to arise because of the Jewish people who started to build their own to build their own settlements on their own and disregarding the farmlands that they have taken, because they would take these farmlands by force and they would start building settlements on them. Things started to get more violent. Some people resisted, and of course, at that time, it was the British Mandate. I'm talking about the British Mandate times after 1917, and 1917, Arthur Balfour, who gave the promise, who wrote a promise for Lord Rothschild, telling him that we will give the land of Palestine to the Jewish people, and we will help them establish their nation on the land of Palestine.
Yeah.
So there was British support for them, which to us Palestinians, we saw this as like these people are occupying us. Yeah. Act of aggression. These people are occupying us. The British, they are occupying us, and we are resisting them. And those people who are occupying us are bringing those immigrants here, and they are arming them, and they're telling them, "Oh, you can go attack these villages, and you will build small settlements here and here." And yeah, so
So the British directly gave weapons to the Jewish migrants to basically set up settlements on the Palestinian land after the British banned it. Okay, interesting.
They started having some militias like the Haganah, if you hear about it. Notorious Jewish militias that started actually killing Palestinians, displacing them, taking their lands, and kept repeating on and on and on and on until the tensions reached the height in 1947.
Yeah,
1947, 1948, 1947. You had the partition, the partition law that came from the UN, basically, which is decision number 181, and they decided to partition Palestine and give, I think it was 54%. No, I think it was
a little bit over 50%.
I think it was like 54% to the
interesting about that is that they decided to give the more strategic and better parts of the land to the Israelis.
Most of the coast will be for the Jewish people. The strategic green fertile lands will be taken from the Palestinians and given to them. And it's just a very, very unjustified law. And you cannot forget that also at that time, from what I know, is that the population of the Jewish people in Palestine was barely 30 to 40% at that time. And you're giving those people who immigrated recently in the last 30 years, you're giving them more than 50% of the land. And by the way,
not to mention the great morality of establishing an ethno-state in the first place.
The morality of having to establish an ethno-state, a racist ethno-state only for Jewish people. And don't forget that after 1948, the loss of the 1948 war, what Palestinians had after that is only 22%. West Bank and Gaza, 22%. And after 1967, it's even less, because they occupied the West Bank, they occupied Gaza, and they started building settlements in Gaza and the West Bank. Now I'm in the West Bank, and the West Bank is full, hundreds of settlements in the West Bank. I can talk about later about how the life is in the West Bank regarding the settlements and the aggression that is and the violence that is daily there.